Iran and Israel, irreconcilable enemies, a holy war, a nuclear threat, and a hatred that seems to be ingrained at the genetic level. But there are facts that don't fit with all of the above. Few people know this, but these countries shared a secret oil pipeline. And just 1 year after the Islamic Revolution, when Iran had already officially declared Israel the Little Satan, it began purchasing weapons from it. And at this point, the picture shifts. Ideology and religion quickly fade into the background. So what really divides Iran and Israel? And what drives this confrontation? Let's examine why this local crisis has drawn the attention of world leaders and become a global event. If we try to quantify this conflict in numbers, it becomes even clearer that this is not merely a local skirmish between two neighbors. Over the past decades, Israel has carried out hundreds of strikes against targets linked to Iran and its allies in Syria and Lebanon alone. These include air raids, air-to-ground missiles, and strikes on weapons depots, convoys, bases, and air defense facilities. On the other hand, Iranian proxy groups have fired tens of thousands of rockets and mortars at Israel from Lebanon and Gaza, and in recent years, these have been joined by kamikaze drones and precision-guided missiles. But how did this protracted, complex conflict, marked by mutual attacks, evolve into a system in which each side pursues its own objectives, and the key players are divided into two blocks? The first is the US and Israel. Logistical and intelligence support is provided by the UK, bases in Cyprus, the UAE, Azerbaijan, Jordan, and Bahrain. The second is the so-called Axis of Resistance: Iran, IRGC and regular army, Hezbollah, Lebanon, the Houthis, Yemen, and the Popular Mobilization Forces, Iraq. Let's look at the details. To do this, we will examine one of the most recent operations, Epic Fury, in which, in the first 12 hours alone, approximately 900 strikes were carried out against Iranian territory. The targets included command centers, missile factories, and nuclear infrastructure facilities. Stealth platforms formed the backbone of the first wave of the attack. B-2 Spirit, the most expensive aircraft in the coalition's arsenal. The cost of a single aircraft is estimated at $4.5 billion as of 2026. Operating costs. 1 hour of flight costs $150,000. Missions. Delivery of 13.6-ton GBU-57 MOP super heavy munitions to destroy fortified underground targets. The cost of a single such bomb is approximately $3.5 million. F-35 Adir, Israel's primary multi-role fighter. Cost: $130 to $150 million per unit, including maintenance. Consumables. During the operation, there was widespread use of Spice missiles and JDAM kits. The total cost of guided air munitions alone for Operation Epic Fury during the first 100 hours exceeded $120 million. The most telling aspect of the conflict's budget is the cost of defense. The Israeli military employs a multi-layered air defense system, in which the cost of the anti-missile system far exceeds the cost of the target. For example, when Iran launches a $30,000 Shahed 136 drone and the coalition shoots it down with a $4 million PAC-3 missile, the economic damage to the defending side is 133 times greater than the attacker's costs. This is an economic war of attrition. To understand how much the scale has increased, one should look at the 2026 defense budgets. Israel. The Ministry of Defense has requested a record $45 billion, about 6.7% of GDP, of which more than $2 billion has been earmarked specifically for the Iranian case. United States. The total defense budget has exceeded $900 billion, with operational costs already running into the billions per week. For example, in 2022, Israel's spending was exactly half as much. And this naturally raises the question, what's the point? Why burn through billions of dollars in a single night? Why spend such enormous sums of money and resources while taking on such huge risks? When we view this conflict through the lens of a news camera, it creates the illusion of a clear-cut struggle between two sides. This is a narrow perspective, as we see only the tip of the iceberg. But if we begin to delve deeper, its vast hidden part changes our understanding of this conflict. From this perspective, it is no longer a struggle over ideology, but a blockage of the global arteries. The Strait of Hormuz and the Suez Canal are not merely geographical points. They are the valves of the world's circulatory system. When they are shut off, the world is struck by paralysis. The scale here is measured not in hectares of captured land, but in days of cargo delays. The Strait of Hormuz. This is the narrowest and most critical section. 21 million barrels of oil pass through it every day. Major suppliers, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, UAE, and Kuwait. Qatar supplies 20% of the world's total LNG, liquefied natural gas. Who buys it? China, Beijing, India, Japan, and South Korea. Thus, the brunt of the impact falls on Asia, about 90% of all oil from the strait. The Suez Canal, a logistical crisis. Around 12 to 15% of global trade and nearly 30% of the world's container shipments pass through here. Not only oil passes through the canal, but also finished goods, electronics, clothing, and components for factories. It is the main bridge between Asian factories and consumers in Europe. When the canal is blocked or becomes dangerous, ships take a detour around Africa via the Cape of Good Hope. The inflation relay. Sailing around Africa, via the Cape of Good Hope, adds 10 to 14 days to the journey of every tanker and container ship. It's not just longer, it's an additional $2 million in fuel costs. This figure is automatically factored into the price of every liter of gasoline and every electronic device on the other side of the world. For example, an invisible war tax, where war risk insurance premiums in the region have risen by 400%. And also hidden energy blackmail, where, with oil prices at $119.50 per barrel and the effective halt of LNG exports from Qatar, 20% of the global market, the global economy begins to pay for this conflict approximately $2.5 billion per day in the form of excess costs. If we look a little deeper, we'll see that the war isn't just about oil. It's about the things we see every day on store shelves. Iran isn't just about gasoline. It's one of the main suppliers of fertilizers. Without them, farmers in India or Brazil won't be able to grow crops. And that means that in 6 months, food prices will skyrocket around the world. Israel supplies unique raw materials, bromine and potassium. Without them, it's impossible to assemble a modern smartphone or laptop. Bromine is needed to prevent devices from overheating and catching fire. If these supplies stop, factories in Asia will simply grind to a halt. Against this backdrop, gold at $5,400 is a signal that the world has lost faith in fiat money. Major countries, such as China, are now massively divesting themselves of U.S. Treasury bonds and buying up gold by the ton. They want to have a financial cushion that does not depend on politics or the functioning of banking systems. In a world where a single plane crash costing $4.5 billion can bring an entire industry to a halt, gold is the only asset that cannot be shut down. The most straightforward part of this story is the math. Look at the numbers. When a $4 million missile shoots down a cheap $30,000 drone, it's not just about defense. It's a contest to see who runs out of money first. Iran is forcing Western countries to spend an entire year's budget on a single night of defense. And while war rages in one region, record profits are being reported elsewhere. Shares of companies that manufacture weapons have risen by 40%. But even more important is what's happening in the oil market. While Iranian and Iraqi oil rigs are under attack, suppliers from the US and Norway are taking their place. They are taking over other companies' customers and signing contracts for years to come at prices twice as high. What we are seeing is a global battle for a spot in the big leagues. There is a struggle over who will control trade routes and resources and dictate the rules of the financial game. The outcome of this battle will determine who will be the dominant player in the market for the next 30 years. And the losers will have to pay the winner through expensive insurance, fuel prices, and access to technology. That was a look at the situation from a different angle. Subscribe to Parallax Doc to see what lies behind the headlines.